Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture and Mighty Thor Monday. Yeah, I just thought of that. Mighty Thor Monday. Better than just Thor. Monday. Today we are looking at Thor number 339 from January of 1984, continuing the Beta Ray Bill storyline that began a couple issues ago and really launches Simonson's run on the book. Now, last issue ended with Bill and Thor coming back to Odin's Hall, Thor unconscious, but Bill actually also collapsing when he gets there. So Odin orders them, tough one, Odin orders them to the infirmary, have the physicians take care of them, which he does. We have a little moment here where one of the attendants is wondering about how mechanical that alien really is, which I hadn't realized right off the bat. They did refer to him as bionic at one point. So he is, a cyborg, basically. Well, Lorelei is there, and she says, well, I, for one, could care less. I've seen him, and he's repulsive. I'd sooner kiss a dog than be in the same room with him. And along comes Sif, recalling some past triumph, Lorelei. Thor is no dog, but the handsomest god in all Asgard, Lady Sif. And after his defeat, he may welcome such comfort as only I can give. Little bit of a jealousy there, because last issue, Sif saw Lorelei kissing Thor, who was declaring his love for her, but of course, it was Loki. It was trickery. But Sif has her hackles up. And this is continuing a storyline really before Simonson got on the book. The sort of ending of the relationship between Sif and Thor. And this is, those two had been betrothed since, childhood practically. So it sort of creates an identity crisis for Sif to some degree. This is something she's always assumed at some point. They're going to be wed, etc. All of a sudden, that's off the table. So what does it mean for her? So they're exploring all of that. So we have Odin visiting Thor. He's basically saying, I dishonored you by losing. I'm going to give up my godly form. I'll return to Midgard as a mortal, etc. I won't bother you anymore. Or maybe I'll just go, what does he say? Maybe I'll go adventure in the stars, journey among the stars. And Odin, all things are possible, my son. That's really Odin's way of saying, oh, give me a break, dude. You're overreacting. And then Beta Ray Bill, who really doesn't believe he earned the hammer. First of all, the conditions were that he kill Thor, which he could not bring himself to do, but he did not fulfill the conditions. He also will mention, and I don't know if it was here or later, but the fight was in this land of lava and fire. Now, that's sort of the world that Bill grew up in. He's a little more capable of dealing with it than Thor, so it may not have been a fair fight. So he doesn't know that he can take Mjolnir either, although he hates to give up a weapon like that when it could help save his people. Well, Odin has some ideas about this. And, he said, you're worthy. You're worthy. Let me see what I can do while those two are still recovering. And so Odin visits the dwarves. And here's the stuff where we're getting a story that feels very mythological in this series, dealing with the dwarves. And it's also Odin sort of, weaving his webs. Did he set Thor up to lose a little bit? What exactly is Odin doing? Is he seeing that maybe Beta Ray Bill will be a powerful ally in the future? He is kind of worried about where those demons are coming from, since he cannot tell, and he should be able to. So we got the sort of mythic Odin here, a little bit more so than the Odin that we got in earlier comics, who was a lot of, very loud, very dominant. This is kind of the wanderer, and you see that in the depictions here with the flop hat. Well, of course, he goes and visits Eitri of the Dwarves, who recognizes him. And they talk into the night and finally make a deal. And Eitri says, but listen, you gods drove us underground, away from the sun. We're still bitter about that. So here's the deal. You have to send a goddess here to fight our greatest champion. And if she wins, I will do what you have asked me to do. And if she loses, she will be his chattel. In other words, she will belong to him. Okay. Now we rejoin Thor and Bill. They're still kind of going through what they've been going through. There's no ill will between them. And they see Sif in her battle armor heading away. And they discover what she's heading away for. She has to go fight this champion on their behalf. And Thor doesn't like the idea of that. And we see a little bit of how, Odin came to her. And he sees what's going on. He sees what's going on, that she has this attraction to Bill. And maybe he's forwarding, his schemes a little bit, but maybe he's forwarding everybody else's schemes as well. Well, she soon enters into combat against Throg. I think it actually maybe would be pronounced Trog. But this giant, he's a dwarf. Well, remember, the dwarves and the trolls, sort of the same thing in Norse mythology. A lot of us now, this is Star Frontiers, but because of games like Dungeons & Dragons from TSR, because of Lord of the Rings, we tend to see dwarves, elves, trolls as being very separate creatures. That wasn't always the case in mythology. Well, Throg attacks her. She fights back, and this is Sif. She is a warrior born, and one of the things she's fighting for here is to show to Bill that she is a true warrior. She's trying to gain his approval to some degree. We now skip back to a couple things, a few things going on these 2 pages. Volstagg is still telling the tale to, I think it's Angmar, about the death of Balder and Loki's involvement. Here we see Loki with the traditional horned helm that he oftentimes wore. And what Balder goes through, he goes down into hell, basically. And I think they actually cover that on a later page, but I'll just say here, that's where he sees, the souls of these warriors being feasted on by the dragon. And he sees that these are people he has killed in combat. And then we get this. We get the forging of, and here it says right out, the forging of a sword. Who's doing the forging? We get the doom. And it says, the storm is rising. Oh, boy. Okay. Oops. I can't grab that from the bottom of the page, apparently. There we go. We also see a scene in Canada, I think off the coast of Quebec, where this guy, he's a lighthouse keeper. He's kind of bored. He's been sold a Cuisinart or something by a sales lady, and he's kind of like, why did I buy this from her? Probably because he was lonely. And then all of a sudden, what erupts? But this thing, what is this thing? Well, whatever it is, it's angry and it wants vengeance. So you see how Simonson, page to page, is advancing the storyline of Thor, having some doubts about, his mortal form, Bill dealing with his people, which does also tie into Odin. Odin is trying to help Bill in certain ways and maybe helping himself as well. Sif is going through all of her problems, which is also tied to both Thor and now to Beta Ray Bill. And she's also now advancing Odin's schemes in fighting against Throg. But then we have the forging of this sword that's going on. We have the story about Balder the Brave. And we also have now this thing erupting and wanting vengeance. There's a lot going on here, and it's done very concisely and done very, very well, and always done with stunning art, as we see here. So Sif, still in combat, conks this thing on the head with the flat of her blade. She does not wish to kill him. And that's when Eitri shows up. And Eitri's doing a little bit of scheming of his own. Sif's kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, what has really been gained here? Well, it turns out Throg was bullying all the other dwarves. He was ruling over them, and they didn't like it. But now he has been defeated in combat, and he has been defeated by a woman, which means he's going to slink away in shame. Hey, the dwarves, maybe not the most, progressive folks in the world. He's going to slink away in shame for a couple hundred years and leave them alone. But the bargain has been made. She's done her part. It is time to forge a weapon. We get a moment with Beta Ray Bill here and Sif, and she's sort of trying to, let him know maybe how she's feeling. But he's like, how he says here, when I was remade as a warrior to save my people, I surrendered all my humanity. I have none left for anyone. I do not think I could bear the prospect of returning to such a perfect world, here talking about Asgard, no matter how much I might long to. And we see the disappointment on Sif's face at hearing that. She's obviously not fallen in love with his looks. She's fallen in love with this very brave, honorable warrior who, like Thor, worthy to wield Mjolnir. Thor has sort of rejected her for Midgard, so maybe she's looking for a new Thor, in a way. Now we get the forges of the dwarves, and this is the stuff that, Kirby set this standard, that Asgard is at once medieval fantasy and sorcery, and it's also high tech, because the forges of the dwarves look, kind of like a steel mill in Pittsburgh, and they're melting down Uru metal, the metal used to forge Mjolnir. They're melting it down. Everything is blue hot. I love the color schemes there. And they pour it into this mold, and at that moment, Odin must release the enchantment into it. But you do see here, they all have the goggles on. So again, it's that science, sorcery and super science, like they talk about in the opening of Thudarr the Barbarian, designed by Kirby. So he releases the enchantment, Cthulhu, and then Bill has to put on this gauntlet and reach into the molten metal and grab a hold of what he finds and pull it out. And so he does, and he changes once more into his Thor form. Bada boom. The enchantment is mine once more. Okay, what has happened here? Well, he has a new magic hammer that he can play with. And of course, this is Stormbreaker, which I think a lot of people from the MCU know about, although they don't know, about Beta Ray Bill necessarily, because as they often did in the MCU, they would skip around and often leave out the best stories from the Marvel Universe in the movies that they did. What can you do? So he has this new hammer, and he knows that he must go back to his people. And Odin says, yes, you must, because the demons have almost caught them. You may even be too late. And from Thor, Father, let me go with him. If, as you have said, the demons' power rivals your own, even Bill may not succeed against them. Yet together we may prevail. This was my hope. But remember, my son, the power of the demons comes from their source. You must destroy it, or there will be no victory. So, Thor and Beta Ray Bill together are going to fight the demons. How are they going to get there quickly enough? He summons his chariot, drawn by his goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. Farewell, Lord Odin. Look for us again where we have had the victory. But they're not going alone. Lady Sif is going along as well, which Thor is actually happy about. Thor maybe is not, well, maybe he knows more about what's going on than people oftentimes think of Thor. And so off they go, drawn by the goats in their chariot through space. This is the kind of stuff that I love about Thor. And again, kind of set down by Kirby in the Elder Days and carried forward. They go off to fight the demons and protect Bill's people. All right. Awesome stuff. Advancing the Beta Ray Bill storyline, but as I was just saying, it's advancing about 7 different stories, introducing a new one as well. Some great storytelling from Simonson in these things. And, if you are you want to be a comic book writer, these are great books to read and try to understand how he does it, how he weaves all this stuff together, because he does an excellent job. And of course, the art is absolutely beautiful. All right, folks, let me know in the comments what you think of Thor, number 339 from January of 1984, continuing the Bill storyline, which will, to some degree, conclude next issue. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. We are doing Mighty Thor Mondays all year, all 2026. We're going to be going issue by issue in this retrospective of the legendary run by Walt Simonson. Until next time, though, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Read some Thor. Hey, the Thor comic book. Read some actual Thor mythology. You're going to find some really cool stuff in there if you do. And I will see you again, hopefully soon, in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.